Here is your complete story. Rosa Amara had carried heavy things her whole life. Not just suitcases. Not just the 3 bags she dragged off the bus that Tuesday morning in Palermo, her arms burning, her feet already complaining. She carried the kind of heaviness that settles into a person slowly, year by year, until they stop noticing it is there. She was 31 years old. She had cleaned other people's homes since she was 19. She had learned to move quietly, to take up less space than she actually occupied, to make herself easy to overlook. She was very good at being overlooked. The estate sat outside the city, behind iron gates and tall stone walls covered in bougainvillea that nobody had planted on purpose. It was the kind of place that looked beautiful from a distance and colder the closer you got. A black car had picked her up from the agency. The driver did not speak to her. He looked at her once in the rearview mirror and then did not look again. The head housekeeper was a thin woman named Julia with gray hair pulled flat against her skull and eyes that had stopped being surprised by anything a long time ago. She walked Rosa through the estate without slowing her pace. The marble floors. The high ceilings. The rooms that smelled of money and very little warmth. She stopped at the kitchen door. 11 chefs, Julia said. 14 months. Rosa waited. He does not eat, Julia continued. Whatever is prepared, he looks at it, and he sends it back. You will learn his schedule. You will stay out of his way. You will last longer than the others did. Rosa looked through the small glass window in the kitchen door. The kitchen was large and cold and perfectly clean. Every pot hung in its place. The refrigerator was tall and silver and humming to itself. Nobody had cooked in here recently. She could tell. A kitchen that has been used regularly carries the memory of heat in its walls. This one had forgotten. Understood, Rosa said. Julia nodded and walked away. Rosa pushed open the kitchen door and went inside. She tied her apron the way her mother had taught her, looping the strings twice around her waist and knotting them at the front. Her mother had believed that a properly tied apron was the beginning of everything. You could not cook well if you were not properly dressed for it. She opened the refrigerator. The vegetables were perfect. Tomatoes so red they looked painted. Peppers lined up by size. Eggs arranged in careful rows, large to small, like someone had organized them with a ruler. It was the refrigerator of a man who cared very much about food. A man who cared very much about food he would not eat. She stood in front of it for a while, reading it the way you read a letter that is trying to tell you something between the lines. Then she closed the refrigerator and opened the cupboards. She found what she needed. The next morning, Rosa cooked breakfast at 6 o'clock. She made eggs the way her mother had made them in their small kitchen in Lagos, then later in the even smaller kitchen in South London where they had moved when Rosa was 9. Plum tomatoes. A little palm oil. Pepper. The smell that filled the kitchen was nothing like Italy. It was nothing like anything this kitchen had ever held before. She plated it simply. Set it on the dining room pass-through. She did not wait to see what happened. She went back to wash the pan. She did not hear him come in. She did not know he was there until she turned to dry her hands and caught the edge of a shadow through the pass-through window. A tall man. Dark suit. Standing very still in the dining room, looking at the plate she had left. He stood there for a long time. Then he walked away. The plate was still there an hour later when she came to collect it. Full. Untouched. But he had not sent it back. He had not sent a message. He had simply left it. Rosa scraped it into the bin and washed the plate and told herself it was nothing. On the second morning, she cooked palm nut soup. There was a palm tree in the back garden that nobody had touched, and it offended her deeply. She gathered what she needed. She made the soup slowly, the way it was supposed to be made, without rushing any part of it, because her mother had told her that food knows when you are impatient with it. The head of security appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was a large man with a wide neck and an expression that never fully relaxed. The boss wants to know what that smell is, he said. Food, Rosa said, without looking up. A pause. He wants to know what kind of food. The kind you eat, she said. He left. He came back 6 minutes later looking like a man who had been given an assignment he did not know how to complete. He is coming to the kitchen, he said. Rosa stirred her pot. She heard him before she saw him. Not loud footsteps. The opposite. The quiet kind of footsteps that belong to people who have learned that silence is more powerful than noise. And then he was in the doorway. Dominic Caruso was 38 years old. He was the kind of man that rooms reorganized themselves around. Not because he demanded it. Because something in the air responded to him before anyone had a chance to decide whether they wanted it to. He stopped at the counter. He looked at the pot on the stove. He looked at Rosa. She was tasting the soup with a wooden spoon and frowning at it because it needed another 2 minutes and she did not like to rush the last 2 minutes. "What is this?" he asked. "Soup," she said. "I can see that." "Then why ask?" The kitchen became very quiet. Through the doorway, 2 members of his security detail appeared to stop breathing entirely. Rosa turned and looked at him. Directly. The way she had learned to look at powerful people, which was the same way she looked at everyone else, because she had decided a long time ago that adjusting her eyes for status was a habit she could not afford to develop. He had dark eyes. The kind that were always doing calculations. "It will be ready in 20 minutes, she said. "You can eat then or you can not eat. But please do not stand in the kitchen doorway while I am cooking. It makes the food nervous." He looked at her for a moment that was a little longer than comfortable. Then he turned and left. Rosa went back to her pot. 22 minutes later, she placed a bowl on the dining room pass-through and returned to clean the stove. When she came to collect the bowl 30 minutes after that, it was empty. Clean. Not just finished but clean in the way that means someone did not want to waste a drop. She held the empty bowl for a moment. Then she washed it and put it away and did not make anything of it out loud. By the 5th day, the staff had noticed. They were careful about how they discussed it, in low voices over early breakfasts in the servant quarters, because this was the kind of household where the walls knew how to listen. But the fact was visible to anyone paying attention. He was eating. Not everything. Not every day. But he was eating what Rosa made and not sending it back, and for a house that had watched 11 people fail at this exact task in 14 months, that was the sort of thing that people noticed. Julia found Rosa alone on the back staircase on the afternoon of the 5th day. "Be careful," she said. "Of what?" Rosa asked. "I am a cook." Julia looked at her in the way people look at someone who is walking towards something they cannot see yet. "You are becoming more than that to him," she said. "That is not a safe place to be." Rosa thought about this. She thought about the empty bowl. She thought about the way he stood in the kitchen doorway some mornings, not announcing himself, not asking for anything, just standing there watching her work with those calculating eyes. "I am exactly a cook," Rosa said. "That is all I am and all I intend to be." She walked back down the stairs. On the 11th day, he sat in the kitchen. Not the dining room. Not the long formal table with the chandelier and the 12 chairs. The kitchen, on a wooden stool at the island, while Rosa worked around him the way a river works around a stone, without making it strange, without commenting on it. She handed him coffee. He took it. She moved pots. He watched. For a long time neither of them spoke, and the silence was not uncomfortable, which surprised Rosa because silence with powerful men was usually a performance, a display of control. This was something else. "Who taught you to cook?" he asked. "My mother," she said. "Where is she now?" Rosa was quiet for exactly 1 moment. One small moment, closed and private. "Gone," she said. He did not ask how. He did not ask when. He did not lean forward with the kind of sympathy that is really just curiosity wearing a softer coat. He looked down at his coffee. "I'm sorry," he said. And because he said nothing else, because he did not try to fill the space with words that would have made it worse, Rosa believed him. "It's good soup," he said, a few minutes later. "I know," she said. He almost smiled. She saw it. The beginning of one, at least, at the corner of his mouth, which was apparently as far as smiles were permitted to go on his face. She turned back to the stove before it could mean anything. On the 14th night, something happened. A bottle of wine arrived with a business delivery, sent by an associate as a gift, opened by the household sommelier and set on the dining room table. Dominic did not drink it. He never drank anything he had not watched be opened himself. This was not a preference. This was a rule that had existed for 9 years, since the night he sat at his own table and drank what a man he trusted had poured for him. He had survived that night. The men who poured the drink had not survived the week. The wine sat untouched. 30 minutes after it was opened, a member of the security team ran a test on it. The estate locked down. Rosa was in her room when the knock came, firm and quick, and a voice through the door told her to stay where she was and not open windows. She sat on the edge of her bed and listened to the sounds of the house reorganizing itself around a threat. Boots on floors. Low voices. Doors that locked from the outside. She sat with her hands in her lap and she thought. 11 chefs in 14 months. A man who will not eat what he has not watched be made. A kitchen that had forgotten what warmth felt like. She had thought it was grief. Or difficult behavior. Or the particular coldness of very powerful men who have confused control with safety. But it was not grief. It was not coldness. It was fear. 9-year-old fear, wearing a very expensive suit, trying every day to stay alive in a world that kept reminding him how easily it could take that away. She sat with that understanding for a long time. It did not make her feel sorry for him exactly. It made her feel something quieter than sorry. More honest than sorry. At 2 in the morning, she could not sleep. She went to the kitchen because her hands needed something to do and because the kitchen was the one room in this large cold estate that she had made her own in some small way. She put the kettle on. She stood at the counter and let the darkness be dark around her. She heard his footsteps in the hallway. That particular quiet. He appeared in the doorway. He was still in his suit, though the jacket was gone now, and he looked like a man who had spent the last several hours managing something that had required him to be very still and very controlled, and was now, at 2 in the morning, standing in a kitchen doorway not entirely sure why he had come here. "Sit down," Rosa said. "I will make you something." "I am not hungry." "I did not ask if you were hungry." "Sit down." He sat. She made jollof rice. She made it the way her mother had made it when bad things happened, slowly and without shortcuts, because the 20 minutes it took was part of what the food gave you. The smell filled the kitchen the way warmth fills a cold room, not all at once, but from the center outward. He sat on his stool and watched her work. She did not look at him constantly. She did not perform anything. She moved around the kitchen the way she always moved around the kitchen, which was with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing how to do one thing very well. She set the plate in front of him. He looked at it. "You watched me make it," she said, which was not a question. "I watched you make it," he confirmed. "Then eat." He ate. Slowly at first. Then less slowly. The kitchen was quiet except for the small sounds of someone eating and a woman washing her own pot at the sink. Outside, the estate was still on alert. Men with earpieces moved along the walls. The world beyond the gate remained whatever the world beyond the gate was. In the kitchen, there was rice. There was a man eating it. There was a woman who had made it. He set down his fork. "Why do you cook like this?" he asked. "Like what?" "Like you are not trying to impress anyone." Rosa dried her hands on a cloth. She thought about the question, because it deserved to be thought about. "My mother used to say that food made for approval tastes like approval," she said. "Which is to say, it tastes like nothing. It has no character. It is just trying to be liked." He was quiet. She said, "Cook for the person, not for the reaction. Know what the person needs, even if they do not know it themselves. Then cook that." He looked at her. "What did you think I needed?" he asked. Rosa folded the cloth and set it on the counter. "Something warm," she said simply. "That was made by hands you could see." She turned off the kitchen light above the stove so that only the smaller light over the sink remained, golden and low. "Good night," she said. "Good night," he said. He did not move from the stool for several minutes after she left. She did not know that. But the security guard who came to check on him at 2:45 in the morning found him still sitting there, the empty plate in front of him, looking at the door to the hallway through which a woman who cooked without trying to impress anyone had disappeared. The guard said nothing. Dominic said nothing. He stood, straightened his shirt, and walked back to his office, where the rest of the night waited for him. On the 21st day, 3 days before Rosa's contract rotation was scheduled to end, she found an envelope slid under her door in the morning. Inside was a new contract. 12 months. More money than she had made in the previous 2 years combined. A private room in the east wing, which had its own window and its own bathroom and faced the garden where the palm tree stood. She read it twice. She folded it. She put it on the small table beside her bed. Julia knocked at 9. "Have you read it?" she asked. "Yes," Rosa said. "What will you do?" Rosa looked at the window of her small room, at the strip of Sicilian sky that was going pink and orange at the edges. She thought about her mother's kitchen and the 20 minutes jollof rice takes and the particular quiet of a dangerous man at 2 in the morning who had come to stand in a doorway for reasons he could not have explained to anyone, least of all himself. She thought about what it meant that he had sent the contract through a note slid under a door instead of summoning her to an office or sending a message through the security chief. She thought about what that meant about him. About what he was willing to ask for and how. "I will think about it," she said. Julia nodded and left. Rosa picked up the envelope and held it. Outside, in the garden, the palm tree she had no business noticing and every right to use stood in the morning light. It had been there long before she arrived. It would be there long after most things. She set the contract back on the table. She went to the kitchen. She tied her apron twice around her waist, knotted at the front, the way her mother had shown her, and she started breakfast. She had already decided. But he did not need to know that yet. There were things a man like Dominic Caruso had always been able to simply reach for and take. She was not going to be one of those things. She was going to make him wait. Not out of cruelty. Out of the simple and firm belief that things worth having should not come without some small measure of patience. She sliced tomatoes. She cracked eggs. The kitchen filled with warmth, and somewhere on the other side of the estate, in an office full of serious men discussing serious things, a man who had survived nearly everything paused in the middle of a sentence. He had smelled breakfast. And for the first time in a very long time, he was actually hungry.